Jay Monahan thought he held all the cards. He was the commissioner of the PGA Tour, a legal tax-exempt monopoly controlling professional golf for over half a century. If you wanted elite television time, you played on his tour. You were an independent contractor. You paid your own travel and caddy, missed the cut, and you walked away with $0. Monahan controlled the supply, the demand, and the broadcast rights. He possessed absolute power. But then, a sovereign wealth fund from Saudi Arabia exploited the fatal flaw in Monahan's business model. LIV Golf did not just create a rival tour. They executed a ruthless contract coup that shattered the PGA Tour's financial structure, exposed its archaic labor practices, and forced Monahan into a humiliating public surrender. You clicked this video to understand the exact business mechanics of how LIV Golf pulled this off, and why Jay Monahan is now completely powerless. Before we get to the specific loophole LIV exploited to recruit Phil Mickelson, hit the subscribe button and tell me in the comments, should professional athletes have guaranteed salaries, or should they only eat what they kill? Let's get straight to the facts. To understand the coup, you have to understand the target. The PGA Tour operates under a 501(6) tax exemption as a membership organization. This status supposedly promotes the common interest of golf professionals, but the tour does not treat its players like employees. They are independent contractors. A golfer on the PGA Tour has no guaranteed income. If a player tees it up on Thursday, shoots 75 twice, and misses the cut, he goes home with a negative bank balance. The tour owned the media rights, secured massive corporate sponsorships, and signed billion-dollar television deals. Players only saw a fraction of that money through prize purses. Tiger Woods generated billions of dollars in economic value for the PGA Tour over 2 decades. His official career earnings sit at roughly $120 million. The rest was absorbed by the corporate machinery. This created a massive vulnerability. Elite players generated enormous television ratings, but took all the financial risk. Greg Norman saw this flaw decades ago. He tried to launch a rival World Golf Tour in 1994, proposing guaranteed money. The PGA Tour crushed him by threatening to suspend defectors. Norman never forgot the playbook. In October 2021, backed by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, Norman returned as CEO of LIV Golf Investments. The PIF had over $700 billion in assets. They simply offered the one thing Monahan refused: guaranteed, upfront cash. The strategy was devastatingly simple, but right here, you need to evaluate the PGA Tour's legal defense. If you classify workers as independent contractors, how can you legally ban them from playing in a competing tournament on their weeks off? Drop a comment below with your verdict. Does a lifetime ban for an independent contractor violate basic antitrust laws, or is it a justifiable defense of a sports league? Let's look at exactly how this legal contradiction broke the PGA Tour. LIV Golf bypassed the standard prize money model. They approached the biggest names in the sport and offered signing bonuses that dwarfed their entire career earnings. Dustin Johnson was handed a reported $125 million just to sign. Phil Mickelson secured a reported $200 million. Brooks Koepka and Bryson DeChambeau signed for north of $100 million each. This was guaranteed money wired directly to their bank accounts. The players immediately transformed from independent contractors into highly paid employees of a franchise league. LIV instituted 54-hole events, no cuts, and shotgun starts. Every player who showed up was guaranteed a paycheck. The financial risk was entirely removed. Jay Monahan retaliated instantly. He banned the defectors. He assumed the remaining players would stay loyal to the prestige of the PGA Tour. But in August 2022, 11 LIV players filed an antitrust lawsuit in a California federal court alleging unlawful monopoly and restraint of trade. The suit argued the PGA Tour abused market dominance to suppress wages. Monahan was now fighting a multi-front war. He was hemorrhaging star players to a rival league, and he was simultaneously forced to defend his business model in federal court. The legal discovery phase alone threatened to expose the heavily guarded internal finances of the PGA Tour. Panic set in at tour headquarters. Monahan realized he could no longer rely on tradition. decision? Predict the logical outcome here and tell me in the comments. When a tax-exempt non-profit goes to war with a sovereign wealth fund, who runs out of cash first? Think about the leverage involved, because Monahan's next move exposed his total desperation. To stop the bleeding, the PGA Tour altered its business model. Monahan announced a series of designated tournaments, later rebranded as signature events. These featured massive purse increases, guaranteeing $20 million per tournament. To ensure top players got paid regardless of performance, the tour drastically expanded the Player Impact Program. The PIP was a slush fund designed to funnel tens of millions to popular players based on metrics like television time and search volume. The tour was attempting to match LIV's guaranteed money model without admitting it. But Monahan had a mathematical problem. The PGA Tour did not have a sovereign wealth fund backing its operations. They were drawing on emergency reserves to fund inflated purses. Corporate partners balked at skyrocketing costs, with major sponsors dropping out. Monahan was burning cash at an unsustainable rate to fight a rival that literally printed money. Then came the shockwave. On June 6, 2023, Jay Monahan appeared on CNBC alongside Yasir Al-Rumayyan, governor of the Saudi PIF. Monahan, who had spent a year using 9/11 families as a moral shield to criticize LIV Golf, announced a shocking framework agreement. The PGA Tour, DP World Tour, and PIF had secretly agreed to merge commercial operations into a for-profit entity called PGA Tour Enterprises. The antitrust litigation was dropped. The golf world was paralyzed. Monahan had demanded ultimate loyalty from players like Rory McIlroy, who turned down hundreds of millions to defend the tour. Then, behind closed doors, Monahan cut a deal with the people he demonized. He bypassed his own player directors and surrendered the moral high ground to secure a financial lifeline. Monahan claimed the framework agreement was the only way to save the tour. But look at the brutal reality of the negotiation table. Answer this in the comments right now. Did Jay Monahan actually negotiate a merger, or did he simply negotiate the exact terms of his own surrender? Keep that leverage in mind, because what LIV Golf did next proved exactly who was running the sport. The framework agreement was a ceasefire, not a binding contract. The deadline to finalize the deal was set for December 31, 2023. Negotiations stalled. The US Department of Justice opened an antitrust investigation into the proposed merger. Monahan was trapped. He had alienated his star players. The Saudi deal was in regulatory jeopardy, and reserves were draining. LIV Golf sensed the vulnerability. They knew Monahan could not enforce player loyalty anymore. The moral argument was dead, so LIV executed a targeted strike. In December 2023, Jon Rahm, the reigning Masters champion, left the PGA Tour to join LIV Golf. Rahm had been one of the tour's most vocal defenders. LIV did not just offer a signing bonus, they offered an ownership stake. Rahm's contract was reported to be worth upwards of $500 million. He was given his own franchise, Legion XIII, allowing him to build equity in a sports asset. The Rahm acquisition was a fatal blow to Monahan's leverage. It proved the PIF was completely willing to continue weaponizing its capital while sitting at the negotiating table. The PGA Tour realized the PIF was not going to stop. Monahan was forced to seek alternative capital from American private equity. Evaluate this business decision and tell me in the comments, if Monahan had simply offered the players equity in the television rights 5 years ago, would LIV Golf even exist today? Did corporate greed at the PGA Tour manufacture its own executioner? In early 2024, the PGA Tour announced a massive pivot. They finalized a deal with Strategic Sports Group, a consortium of US-based sports franchise owners led by Fenway Sports Group. SSG agreed to inject an initial $1.5 billion into PGA Tour Enterprises. For the first time in history, over $1.5 billion in equity was allocated directly to the players. The PGA Tour was finally treating them as stakeholders rather than disposable contractors. But the damage was already done. Jay Monahan remains the commissioner, but his power is completely hollow. He no longer controls the board. The players and the private equity billionaires from Strategic Sports Group hold the actual voting power. Monahan operates at the mercy of Fenway Sports Group and players who fundamentally distrust him after the secret June 6 agreement. Elite players extracted maximum value during a historic window of sovereign wealth leverage. The PGA Tour was forced to sell its equity to survive. The monopoly is dead. The independent contractor model has been irreversibly shattered. Professional golf will never return to the days when the commissioner held absolute authority. Monahan survived the coup, too, but he lost his empire in the process. Hit the subscribe button to track the DOJ antitrust investigation into golf, and click the video on your screen to see how sovereign wealth funds are buying out global sports.